Hello, and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkandstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep into the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything's on the One, the First Guide to Funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be glad you did. Whether you're watching or listening, as always, I thank you very much for your continued support and interest in the program. My guest for this episode is jazz, R&B, funk, and Latin percussionist and multi-instrumentalist Bill Summers. Summers first forged his impeccable reputation as a leading-edge player by capturing the fancy of jazz keyboard legend Herbie Hancock, who placed Summers as a founding member of his Headhunters lineup that unleashed a string of groundbreaking electronic jazz funk albums during the 1970s. That includes such landmark tracks as Chameleon, Actual Proof, and Hang Up Your Hang-Ups. That last one, from my all-time favorite from Herbie, and one of my all-time favorite albums ever, is 1975's Man-Child. Future P-Funk guitarist Blackbyrd McKnight was also a member of the Headhunters, which released its own albums and recorded masterful tracks like God Made Me Funky. While Summers continued to record with Hancock, including later funk classics like Ready or Not, he ventured out to release 4 albums under his own name. Then in 1981, he hit it big as Bill Summers and Summers Heat, with the album and slamming title track, Call It What You Want. That band wound up releasing 4 albums and placing 7 songs on the US R&B chart. At the same time, in the 1970s and throughout the 80s, Summers added his hand drums expertise to projects by Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, the Bar-Keys, Funk Shun, Stanley Clarke, the Pointer Sisters, Bobby Womack, Lenny Williams, and Patrice Rushen. In the late 1990s, he established a popular Latin jazz trio, Los Hombres Calientes, and he still continues to perform today. In this interview, the energetic and talkative Summers takes us on a cultural and musical excursion chock full of nuggets of percussion, jazz, and funk. His fanciful stories demonstrate that 45 years into an astonishing career, Summers can still bring the heat. So now, let's fire it up with Bill Summers. Hey, I'm delighted to welcome to Truth and Rhythm, jazz, R&B, funk, and Latin percussionist and multi-instrumentalist Bill Summers. Among his nearly 5 decades of credits are working with Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters, Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, the Bar-Keys, Funk Shun, Stanley Clarke, his own solo albums and those with his bands Summers Heat and Los Hombres Calientes. Calientes. Yeah. Bill, how the heck are you?
I'm too blessed to be stressed. As my good friend says, I'm too anointed to be disappointed. I'm good. I'm happy. I'll stay happy. Happy.
Excellent. You're coming to us from Louisiana. Whereabouts?
Well, I'm sitting in my office studio in an area called Uptown New Orleans, near Napoleon Avenue and Ferret Street, which is a bustling little street that, due to regentrification has popped up as a hot spot. Unfortunately, they're moving out the indigenous inhabitants to do it. But I enjoy it. I've been at the spot for a while, and I have some property in the country that I spend time at.
So you're keeping the riffraff out?
No, I bring the riffraff in. That's what I'm working with. The so-called riffraff, those are my people. I'm a grassroots kind of guy. I'm a Malcolm X kind of guy. I'm down to the lumpen proletariat. I'm dealing with the common man. That's my friend.
So you're from that area originally?
Well, that's a loaded question. I would say, yeah, very much so. Just through lineage. I was raised in Detroit. My family left this area to escape Jim Crow. You may know him. He's not a nice guy. Yeah. So he made nightly visits, to certain people. Sometimes he even came with a cross. It wasn't to bless people either. So but my heritage is here. My home. This is my home because my great grandfather came here on my father's side from Europe. So I have a European side, I have an African side and I have a Native American side. And I recognize actually my great great, let's see, this is a my great 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 uncle, who was a brother to my great great grandfather. He was a signer of the Confederate Constitution.
Wow.
So that's a lot of history. That means a lot. And they had actually on the plantation that my father's side of the family came from, they owned 600 slaves. And my great great grandmother was one of them. And she had 7 children by my great great grandfather, George Kenner, who decided he wanted to get married to someone who was not of color. And so he had to get rid of his black family. So he sold his interest in the plantation, which is the Belle Helene plantation in Geismar, Louisiana. He sold his interest in the plantation to his brother Duncan, who was my great great uncle. And so he sold his family to his brother. And
Wow.
My great great grandmother had stashed enough money to buy her freedom. And she also bought the freedom of several of her children. Not all of them, because she was pregnant with the 7th when she left. And George Kenner was supposed to give her what was called at the time her freedom, her free papers. But he didn't even do that. And she left and moved to St. Louis. And her and her son, Alexander, who is my great uncle, he helped her start a business. He was very good with figures. And so she started a business, which was a cleaning clothes, actually, laundry business. And she became very wealthy. And she would come back when she'd have enough money to buy another one of her kids back, one by one. And she actually, my namesake is Bill Kenner. He was the last of the enslaved people on my family side that gained his freedom. Well, at least she came back to buy his freedom. And Duncan said he wouldn't sell them for the same price as the other kids, which was about $1,800 to $2,000. I guess that would equate to in back in the 1850s or 60s, that would be a lot of money. So he said he would keep Bill for 3 years at $15 a month to make up the difference. And she died before she left him. No deposit though, but she died before he was freed. And when she died, Duncan went to St. Louis and claimed her estate and brought all the kids back into slavery. But Alexander was a smart guy. Plus, he was a mulatto. He was half white and half black. Yeah, he got a little privilege there. You know what I'm saying? The darker you were, the worse your situation. But he got a little there, and but believe it or not, slaves at the time had rights, and they could sue. And he sued his uncle, and he won. He won his mother's estate back. He freed his brother Bill. And Bill said, "I can't go nowhere." And he said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, I got about 15 kids, and you know, I'm building a church. You know, he said, I can't go nowhere. Plus, I'm making." He was a trainer of racehorses. Duncan Kenner had the largest thoroughbred race stable in the country. In fact, one of the black jockeys that was a friend of my great grandfather Bill won the Preakness. And most of the jockeys back in that day were black. You know how the jockeys sit up off the seat. You know, at a certain point they raise up off the seat. Black jockeys created that style. So anyway, that's just a story. So that's why I'm so tied to Louisiana. There it is. I mean, I still occupy the property that my grandmother, who was one generation from slavery, I'm still on that property. It's sacred land.
How do you know so much of that history? It's like Ancestry.com.
Well, here's the thing about it is, in my family, history is important. So these stories have come down from generation to generation. We all know the story, all of us, everybody in the family. My brother he knows it as well or better than I do. So I visit the plantation, that same plantation that is called the Ashland. I developed a relationship with Shell Oil Company because they bought this property and they refurbished it. They, they brought it back to its original luster and glory. So they painstakingly put it back together as exactly as it was when it was built. So I go out there and they called me out there one day because the African American Museum here let them know that there was a descendant still alive and well and living in New Orleans of this Kenner family. So I actually represented the family with a PBS special that was about these antebellum plantations and homes. And I gave the black side of the story as opposed to the other way around, because you very seldom have family of the enslaved that can even talk about it, what their family went through or what it was like. So I spend time there. I do summer camps for kids there at the plantation where my family came from. So
Well,
I try to change the poison into medicine.
Is that program online? Do you know?
I'm sure it is. I'd have to find out the name of it, but I'm sure that I've heard that it was on 400 PBS stations. So
Yeah.
that was some years ago. But I heard people even recently have told me they saw it. I guess it gets aired periodically. I've never seen it. I don't even know the name of it.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to follow up on that because I'd be interested in seeing it too.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fascinating story, Bill. Wow. So how did you first get into music?
I think I was in my mother's stomach. Or somewhere around there, stomach, not stomach, in the womb. It's hard. I think my grandmother was a piano teacher, and music was always a focal point in my family. My parents decided when my brother and I were 5 and 6, I was 5, he was 6. They decided to put us into a conservatory. So I played classical piano for 10 years in the conservatory. I hated every minute of it. I mean, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to play drums. And my father, they have been convinced by the administration at the conservatory that the best foundation for for someone who wanted to play music, not that they wanted me to become a musician, they just liked the discipline of it. And they were music lovers. My family everybody in the family was music lovers. So my grandmother was a music teacher. So there it is. We kind of followed suit, and we followed suit. And I had no idea that I would actually become a musician. It was the furthest thing from my mind, believe me. And so at one point, after many years, I remember this one incident that kind of changed my life in terms of the conservatory. At the same time that I was playing Chopin and Bach and Beethoven and Brahms and Mendelssohn and Czerny exercises, arpeggios, I was listening to Thelonious Monk. I was listening to Ray Charles. I was listening to Aretha Franklin. I was listening to Sidney Poitier. I was hearing music from Cuba, Alegre All-Stars from New York. The first record I ever bought when I was 9 was Thelonious Monk Mysterioso. That was my first music purchase. So, I was pretty deep into it. My brother and I, we played classical music, but on the side, we would play, we get sheet music. It's back in that time, sheet music was popular. You go down to the music store where they sold musical instruments and blah, blah, blah. And they would have a big section with sheet music of popular songs of that particular period, or that particular month or story. You know what I'm saying? It would be like the hits. So I'd go and pick up some music. And I remember this was a life-altering event. I picked up a piece of music called One Mint Julep. It was by Ray Charles. It was a single. It had no singing on it. He didn't sing one word. It was dum bum bum dum bum 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 dum bum 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 dum, something like that. And I just liked it. I fell in love with it. So I bought the sheet music. And buying a piece of sheet music, if you paid 50 cents for it and you were 9 years old or 11, well, that was a big chunk. My biggest what do you call it? What do you call it when your parents give you
allowance?
An allowance, right? Mine went up to $1.25. That's as high as it got for the week. $1.25. My father was not giving any more than $1.20. So if I spent 50 cents on a piece of sheet music, that was a major dent, you know. Fortunately, I had a paper route when I was 12 or 13. So I bought this music with money I was earning. And so I took the sheet music to the conservatory, to my piano teacher. And her name was Frances Taper. And I said, I want to play this. I showed it to her. I said, wow, can I play this? Can you help me play this? And she looked at it, and she had it in her hand, and she folded it in half. Then she folded it again. And then she handed me this little square back. And she said, when you finish learning what I teach you, then you have time for that stuff. Oh, what's it? I was mad as hell. She didn't know it, but she didn't know that a 14, 15-year-old could really process what she had just said. But my parents were civil rights activists, and I just saw racism in it. I was red inside and out. And that was when I quit going to the conservatory and following my own dreams. And Bob bought me a set of bongos. People say bongos, but they're really bongo. And I bought a set of bongo. And I started playing with a guy in the neighborhood. And his name was Jeffrey. I don't even know his last name, but he was a major influence. I can't tell you his last name. But he played, and he could really play. And he had learned a rhythm called martillo, which is a specific pattern that you play on bongos, and it's called, and martillo is hammer in Spanish. So this rhythm was called the hammer. So, like you like an MC, MC Hammer. I'm hammering these bongos, bam, pop, and I'm learning how to play it correctly. It's a specific rhythm. So I fell in love with that. I mean, I'm a rhythm person. That was my introduction. It was my introduction to rhythm. Another thing that, which is really funny, that influenced me was I Love Lucy. Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball. In the beginning of the show, they have this thing going. And there's some music bubbling in the background that was killing me. I would only watch I Love Lucy to hear the beginning and the end of the music, and the beginning and at the end. That was it. So if you pay attention, then also Ricky would do something and say something that I couldn't figure out. He would say, Baba Lou, Baba Lou, and he had a drum he played. He couldn't play worth a damn, but he had a thing, he'd be hitting on it, blah, 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 and Baba Lou. And I'm saying, well, what the hell is Baba Lou? That really, really, really intrigued me. I mean, what is this word? I'd ask some Spanish guy or some Latino, what is Baba Lou? And they couldn't tell me. Well, obviously it ain't Spanish, you know what I'm saying? So with further investigation and study, I found out Baba Lou is African. Now, why is Ricky singing these African words? How did that happen? So that took me on a whole new quest into African music. I said, well, wow, if he's singing Baba Lou, now what does that mean? So I investigated. Baba in Yoruba, which is a West African language from Nigeria, Southeast Nigeria, it's a language, and Baba means father, as it does in India and other places. Now, Baba Lou, they cut it short when he says Baba Lou. It's Baba Lou Aye. That's the whole word. So I got Baba, father. Olu means chief or owner. Aye is the world. So chief, owner, father of the world. Now then I want to find out, well, I need to know more about Baba Lou. So I found out they have rhythms for Baba Lou. They have songs for Baba Lou. And then I found out that there were special drums that they played for all of these different types of African saints. They have rhythms for everything. And they play them on bata, which are 3 specific drums that are double-headed. They come from Africa. Then I realized that since Ricky came from Cuba, or Cuba, as people say in America. Um, I I looked and saw if to find out if there was any mention of Babalu in their society. Found out, oh, that was just the tip of the iceberg. I found out that there were so many types of these saints that are still recognized on the island of Cuba that that just changed my life, because now I have found out that we had our own Tchaikovskys, and that we had our own Mendelssohns and Brahms and Tchaikovskys. They just, nobody knew who they were though. You know what I'm saying? They weren't being publicized because they were playing African drums and African instruments. And being enslaved in the Americas, you're not getting no play like that. You're not getting no press. You know what I'm saying? You're getting depressed, if anything. So that's kind of like my beginning into the world of percussion.
All right, so that got you into percussion. And when did you start sort of playing with bands and start to kind of know that you wanted to be a professional?
Well, here's the thing. There's part of the story I didn't tell you, and I think it's really important. That is, I told you that I like percussion, but I also liked flute and saxophone. So when I was able to, I told my father, like I said, they bought a piano. So they weren't really interested in investing more money into some kind of musical instruments. But so what happened one day, I wanted to play woodwinds. I like flute and sax. And so I was asking my dad, I said, Dad, can we get a flute at least? He said, well, I don't know, son. I don't think so. So my father had a shop. He was a jack of all trades. He had a shop in the basement with a lot of tools and vices and pipe cutting, all kinds of stuff. He was like I said, he could fix anything. So I made a flute out of a piece of pipe, some cork, and drilled some holes in the pipe. And he came home from work one day, and I was playing this pipe. And he looked at me and said, son, let's go to the store and buy you a flute. That's how it happened. That's exactly how it happened. And so I started playing flute. And I was so into playing this flute, I actually he actually bought me a saxophone, because I got so into it. You could see I was so serious about it. And he said, okay, let's go get the saxophone. So I got the saxophone. I got an alto. Then he bought me a tenor. Then I got a piccolo. Then I got a alto flute. And my dad invested a lot of money into me doing this, because he could see I was serious. I didn't go out the house for a year. I didn't play with my friends. I didn't go to the parties. I didn't do nothing but play those instruments. I accumulated those sax over about a period of about 3 years. After he saw how serious I was. So I learned, really, my first instrument that I made money on was as a flautist. And I got hired by a guy named Nimrod Lumpkin, who was an organ player in Detroit. He was the best organ player I have ever seen in my life, and still to this day. I don't think Jimmy Smith could touch him. This guy was so good. He was so good. He was playing organ in his church when he was 5 years old. He was a prodigy. So one day we went to school together. He was a grade ahead of me. And he heard me play one day, and he said, why don't you come sit in with me at the club? And I was 15 or 16 years old. And I said, play at the club? So, of course, I got to go and ask my father, can I go to the nightclub? I'm 15. Can I go and play in the nightclub? Yes, son, you can go. He trusted me. So I went to the club religiously every weekend to play with Rod Lumpkin. And he was the first one to pay me some money. So after that, I'll tell you what happened. This was crucial too in my career. I wouldn't have a career if this one thing didn't happen. And that was when I was a senior in high school, and this was shortly after I started playing with Rod Lumpkin. I was making money, and I was going to school. And so at any rate, it was time to graduate. I transferred from one school to another. And I lost some credit. I lost like a unit, and because they didn't give me all the credits from the other school. I didn't know that. So in my senior year, it came time to take class pictures. They didn't call my name. And that meant, well, something's wrong. I went to the office and said, we can't let you graduate. You're short. I said, but can I make it up? I mean, I'm going to graduate with my class. Can I do anything? They said no. I mean, to my face, like, no. I'm like, well, would you even consider? No. So I quit. That day, I quit high school in the 12th grade. And I went home, and my father was really proud, man. He wanted me to go to college, all of that. And I came in the house, and I said, Pops, I'm through. I quit. And he was reading the newspaper, and he didn't say one word. He said, okay. That's all he said. Okay. So I quit, and I got a job at Ford Motor Company on the assembly line. So now I'm playing music at night. I'm working the assembly line in the daytime. And I realized slavery was Ford Motor Company. That was that assembly plant was just like being a slave. It was no different. There were white people there. There were Russians, Italians, Mexicans. We were all slaves. And you go in the morning, it would be dark, and when I get out in the afternoon, in the end of the day, it would be dark. And all I could remember in my brain was, you know, and the smell of oil, and you know, it's just terrible. So I quit the job, and I got a new job at the racetrack at DRC, Detroit Race Course, as a bus boy in the clubhouse, they call it. That's where all the rich people go and they eat, and they can watch their horse races in a covered environment, eat steak and lobster, and so I was a bus boy. I had to be at work at 11 o'clock in the morning. So that means at night I'm playing music. I got a job that doesn't let me, that I don't have to go till 2:11. And the first thing we do when we get to the job is eat lunch. That's the first thing we do, you know, which is killing. Then I watch 10 horse races and clear tables and make tips. So one day, I'll make this long story short. One day, there was a black guy that shined shoes in the bathroom. And as an employee, I couldn't bet on horses. You can't do it. So I found out that this guy would take bets for the employees. I'd go and meet with him. He'd be shining shoes, okay? White folks shining, black, just shining their shoes. Yes, boss. Yeah, boss. Look, this guy was a millionaire, and I didn't know it. Wow. Nobody knew it. You know, he was filthy rich. And so I would place a bet. So this day, I placed what's called a daily double. You have to win 2 horse races during the day, a race 4, race 8, or whatever. You gotta get both of them. Well, that day was my lucky day. I won the daily double. I threw 50 dishes up in the air. I flipped everybody off. I went and got my money, and I got a round trip ticket to California. And when I got off the plane to San Francisco, I thought everything was Disneyland. The whole thing looked like Disneyland to me. I'm saying, wow.
How old were you, Bill?
17, 18. So I got up, I'm sitting there, and this is really, you have no idea what this meant. When I got off the plane, I went and stayed with some family members from Louisiana, from Donaldsonville, Louisiana. Uncle Boo and Auntie Frankie. And my Uncle Boo was a good guy. And he said, you know, Bill, and I was playing saxophone, practicing all the time. And he was really happy with me being there with him. He said, you know, if you were a resident of California, you could get into school. You could get into a junior college. I said, free? Are you serious? So I took a test. I went to a place called Merritt College. I took a test. They accepted me. I mean, my father was ecstatic. He was so proud that I did what I said I was going to do. What is interesting, and I take you back, is that when I came and I quit high school in the 12th grade, he didn't say nothing. 6 months later, he said, son, he said, I really wasn't worried about you. He said, I have a 3rd grade education, and I run the plant. I draw the blueprints for the furnaces. I put them in. He said, if you had a cure for cancer, they wouldn't care if you had a degree or not. So that just blam. That's the words of wisdom to me. I said, okay, Dad, I got you. So I got in. I had a great grade point average. I applied for UC Berkeley, one of the most prestigious schools on the planet. I got accepted. That's where I met Herbie Hancock. Hey, man, come on. If I didn't quit school, if I hadn't went to Ford, if I hadn't done the DRC, the racetrack thing, I wouldn't have won the ticket. I wouldn't have gotten to Northern California. I would have never gotten to Merritt College, and I would have never been accepted to UC Berkeley. One day I was at UC Berkeley. I was the only undergraduate TA in the music department. You have to be a graduate student to be a TA. I was the only one they had ever accepted as a TA. I was undergrad. I had an independent major in African music and basically an ethnomusicology. And I had to set up my own curriculum with my advisor, who was a guy named Ollie Wilson. And so my senior, it was like, I guess it was maybe my senior year in college. Herbie came to the campus to open the new Arts Institute museum, some kind of museum or something on campus. And my group opened for him. And my group just did ethnic music. We did Brazilian, traditional candomblé, macumba, then we did Haitian vodou, drumming and singing, and Cuban stuff, and just all kinds of the stuff that I was studying. And after the show, Herbie came to me. I didn't go to him. He came over to me and said, "Man, wow, that was interesting. Would you like to come and sit in with my band?" Well, hell yeah. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? I mean, I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, wow. So I packed. That night I was so excited, man. I packed up a little duffel bag full of, hand percussion. Don't call them toys. I'll get mad. I had some hand percussion.
Bill, is this like 1972?
This was 71, 72, 71, somewhere in 71, 72. And yeah, right, somewhere into 70, somewhere around in there. I can't pinpoint it. But I took a bag of instruments to the club in San Francisco. I had a couple of conga drums and a bag with some percussion instruments. I came in the club and I put the bag with the instruments on the side of the stage. I didn't put them on the stage. I put them on the side because I wasn't that presumptuous or that rude of a musician. Because I knew the game. I knew what was going on. I knew what to do, and I knew what not to do. So now here comes Herbie. I'm already there an hour or more behind. I'm all excited. It's Christmas to me. So Herbie walks in. There may have been 3 or 4 people in the club. This was an hour and a half before the show. And he walks in and he glances over to the right as he's going to the dressing room and he sees my stuff. He says, "What's all this shh?" You know what I'm saying, what word I'm using. He said, "What's all this SH over here?" And I heard him. I heard what he said. He went to the dressing room. I went over to my instruments and picked him up and I left. I didn't sit in with him. 6 months later, 6 months or more, whenever, 6 months later, he comes to do a lecture in the music department for the professor that I'm the TA for. I have to meet Herbie and pick him up and bring him to the class in a car. I pick him up and, he said, "Well, do we know each other?" And I'm already like, yeah, you ain't, I'm not really interested in your gab or anything you have to say. I had shut down on him. So he was persistent. And then eventually we talked and I told him what happened. He said, "I did that?" He said, "I did that?" I said, "Well, that's what happened." He said, "I did that." I said, "Yeah, you did that." He said, "Well, would you like to come and sit in with me tonight?" So I did. And from that point on, we struck up a really great friendship. Really good. It was, I didn't know what he was looking for. I didn't know what he was doing, but I was being auditioned. I didn't even know it. I really didn't know it. And I took him to basements to meet. I took him to meet young musicians in the Bay Area, which I introduced him to many. I don't know what he was trying to do, but we'd go to rehearsal, to like people's rehearsals, and he met a lot of people. And a few months later, I sat in with him a couple of more times with Buster Williams and Julian Priester and Eddie Henderson. That was the band he had. Pat Gleason, and those are the people that I began to know around Herbie. So I wouldn't sat in. I didn't get paid though, but that's what you had to do. You had to do stuff like that, especially with someone like Herbie. pay your dues. Pay your dues. Go in, shut up, sit down, listen, and hopefully you'll be around for something else. So one day I get a call on the phone, and Herbie says, Bill, I'd like you to come to LA and play with me on a concert, and I'm going to pay you. Oh, what? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So he sends a ticket. He got his management sends me a ticket. He tells me what to bring my instruments, what to bring, and the SIR, they came and picked my instruments up and shipped them out. And I get to the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium the day of this concert, and I walk in, and nobody's there but me. That's in the band, and then I see some instruments on the stage. There was a harp and a grand piano, and then my percussion. And I'm waiting for the rest of the band to get there to load in. And Herbie pops up, and he bounces over, and he's a happy kind of guy. He comes, hey Bill, hi. I say, what's up, Herbie? Hi. And I said, well, Herbie, where's the rest of the band? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't see any instruments up here. It's just a harp and a piano. He said, that's it. It's me, you, and Alice Coltrane. That was my first real gig with Herbie. That was it. And from there, it was like going to his house, playing with him. He was auditioning people. And the band just happened to be the Headhunters. But it wasn't the Headhunters at the time. It was just the new band he was putting together.
So you were the first headhunter in effect?
I don't think so. I think Benny Maupin was.
Yeah.
Benny Maupin was in the other band before the Headhunters. He kept Benny. Benny went from sextet into the Headhunters. And I think what happened is the people, Paul Jackson, the bass player, he and I were good friends. In the Bay Area, he was the bass player for the Headhunters. In the Bay Area, Paul and I played in bands with him, and I was playing sax and flute, and he was playing trombone. Okay? So, that was a special time and special musicians where you'd have guys that were good on those many type of instruments, So Paul was, it was hard to tell what the succession was because we would just pop up and in fact, I would go to Herbie's house and he would be auditioning other percussionists while I was sitting there. And I made friends with those guys because we were, percussionists are like brothers. They're like, you need each other, just to play together as an ensemble, you need other percussionists. So it wasn't any envy or jealousy there. It was competitive like hell. I was looking at all these guys coming in, playing for Herbie, and I got picked. That's like going to the Olympics.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the first record, did you guys perform much before going in and doing this record?
Yeah, what we did is, that record has a lot of history that I don't think not too many people know or will. I don't know, maybe they'll know about it. Herbie wrote his memoirs that was published recently. I haven't read it because I've written my own memoirs, and I don't want to be influenced by anything I read by anyone else. And it's real difficult to release it or to publish it because how can you tell, there are things that I say in my memoirs, they're my memories, you know what I'm saying? So some of the memories ain't that good. You know what I'm saying? Some of the memories, all the memories are good in the fact that they were growing, they helped me to grow and to be a real person. Mm-hmm. But some of the things I had to endure, I don't know. You have to, I have to kind of be laid back and kind of non-judgmental and sometimes you say things about something that may have happened in the past that just make things worse. Like with Black people being enslaved, it's important to understand what that was. What it really was, not just the surface and not like some television show about it, but understand the deep pain and circumstances that surround those kind of experiences.
Mhm.
Well, in the music world, they have some good things and bad things happening. And I think back, if the further back you go, the worse the treatment. You know, for instance, people like Jelly Roll Morton and Scott Joplin and Buddy Bolden and even Louis Armstrong or Count Basie and Duke Ellington, they had to endure a lot of BS, you know, and that meant at the hands, usually at the hands of who was in charge of the music and business. It's a business. And we were taken advantage of a lot, an awful lot, you know, because if you were black, you weren't allowed to read or write if you were enslaved. That was against the law to teach a slave how to read or write. So that meant that if you wanted to publish your own music, you're out of luck. But they better not find out that you can read and write. You see what I'm saying? So you have all these obstacles. So a lot of that, African American music that was written and composed and performed by black artists, they never saw a dime from it. You see what I'm saying? So there was a great deal of misuse of others' intellectual property. You know what I'm saying? I've studied this to a great extent. Now, the thing that really hurts is that my African American brothers adopted these same type of practices. They learned it, and they learned how to abuse others.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a victim of that. I'm a victim of being robbed, you know, by those who say. I mean, I had one very famous man who I did some composition work with or for, who told me when I questioned him about it, he said, "You're just a percussionist." You know, he said, "Do you know how much money that is? You're nothing but a percussionist." Wow. And believe me, it came from a person like I'm talking about, that we're talking about right now. Someone on that same level. So you know, what you have to do is, for me, if I say it, if I come out with it, then there's a large part of the population in the music world is going to say he's a whistleblower. He's a turncoat. And then there'll be other people like the young kids that are coming up that are going to thank me for it. They say, "We're glad that you had the courage to stand up to the bullshit." You know, so there's that side of it. Now then you got to look at it, is it balanced? You know, how do I balance this? You know, because you know, even with that record, there's been some things that happened to me, like with Watermelon Man. It's one of the most sampled songs that, you know, really sampled a lot. What did they sample? Bill blowing them whistles. You know what I'm saying? I don't get no money for that. Somebody else gets the money, but it's my shit.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of what can happen. Now, am I angry? No. You know, because if it wasn't for Herbie Hancock, I wouldn't have went around the world like I did. I must have went around the world with him 5, 6, 7, 8 times. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So
okay. Well, putting the business part of it aside, if you can, what was it like creating this music in studio?
can you describe heaven? I don't know. I mean, it was wonderful, man. It was wonderful. It was great. It was great. You know, I mean, even though you may not want to hear this, I was getting my ass kicked. I mean, I loved it at the same time. It was a bittersweet kind of thing. When that record came out, if you read them credits on there, like with Watermelon Man, I didn't even get arranging credit. You understand? You got to see that. Even though I'm there, I'm not there. I'm expendable. You understand? You got to see. Understand. Now I got a better way to put it for you. The hand drummer, the hand percussionist that plays the instruments that I have become famous for playing is the N word of the music industry. We're the last one hired and the first ones fired. Understand that? We're on the bottom of the totem pole. Okay? That's a hell of a thing to fight. There were no percussionists getting no jobs when I got that job with Herbie. Not Americans, not American born, let alone American black guys. There, who was there? Name me. I would like you to name me 3 people born in this country that have had a major deal that were a percussionist. Name me 3 in the history of the recording industry. Name me just 3 people that were born in this country who have had a major record deal that were percussionists. I think you're going to have a hard time.
A major record. Well, I don't know the business side of it, so.
Well, major records. Who do you know that's a percussionist born in the United States that's had a major record deal that's a percussionist?
Well, James Mtume made a lot of records.
Yeah, but Mtume was a better producer than a percussionist now. Okay, I love Mtume. He played with Miles. I knew Mtume, so I know him. Okay, I got you. Okay, that's one. I'll give you that one. And that's not a good one, but I'll give you that one. Now, go ahead. Who's next?
Well, you know, I always thought of Harvey Mason as a percussionist.
No. Hand drummers, man. Come on, playing congas and timbales and shekarays and djembes. And it's hard. It's hard, man. Come on.
I mean, I also had Leonard Gibbs on the show, but
did he have a major record deal?
No.
Leonard Gibbs, Dr. Gibbs is one of my best friends in life. We're very close, extremely. You know, we follow each other and we support each other. Also, there's another guy named Munyongo Jackson. You know who he is?
No.
He's a percussionist. He's a featured percussionist with Stevie Wonder. He's been with Stevie for probably 20 some years. And he's also been with many other artists, but he's never gotten a major record deal.
Ralph McDonald comes to mind too.
Well, he's from the islands. Sheila E. is one of them. Okay, she's one. Bill Summers is one. I'll give you Ntume. That's 3. That's not very many.
No.
Okay, so you have to see that being in that position, for me, I was helping to blaze the trail. So was Doc Gibbs to try to blaze the trail to open up more opportunities for people who did what we did.
Well, I mean, through this platform here, Bill, I want to help give you the credit that's due. I mean, that's what this is about.
I got credit. I got my credits because I do other things that are more important than playing music for money. I play, I'm in a fraternity called Anya. And there's only 2 fraternities that survived the slave trade. And Anya is one of them. And Anya, you play music for God, for the universe. You learn rhythms for the ocean. You learn rhythms for the river, for the brooks. You learn rhythms for everything green on the planet. You learn rhythms to play for the universe. That is much more special than playing a gig. Okay, believe me. So I don't really have. I love my job is my hobby, and my hobby is my job. And I love what I do, and that's my reward because every day I get up, I'm happy, and you can't buy that. You can't buy it. You can't. You know. There's a lot of people with money. They ain't happy. Okay. There's a big difference in happy and having money. Now, if you're happy and have money, oh my God, then you're really fortunate. You know what I'm saying?